It started with something as small and harmless as a water leak. You know the kind, just an annoying drip behind the kitchen sink, nothing major. I didn't think it would turn into something that would completely shake the trust one had in people I once considered family. My friend, Rachel, and I have known each other for years. She's the kind of friend who shows up with soup when you're sick, who remembers birthdays without needing a Facebook reminder. So when I mentioned the leak during one of our weekly coffee catch-ups, she offered to send her husband, Mark, to take a look. He's handy with plumbing, she smiled, casually. He won't charge you a thing. I didn't think twice about it. Mark showed up on a cloudy Thursday afternoon, toolbox in hand and a warm, easy smile that made you feel at ease. He was polite, focused, and got straight to work. We made small talk while he tightened pipes and checked for water damage. It all felt very normal. Too normal. Nothing about that day gave me any warning. Not even the moment when the sky outside cracked open and started pouring rain, forcing him to say, "Looks like I'll have to wait this one out." That's where things began to shift. I remember laughing and offering him a cup of coffee while we waited out the storm. After all, he was my friend's husband, someone I trusted. Someone I never looked at in that way. But as the rain kept falling and the evening stretched longer than expected, the lines that once felt so clear slowly began to blur. It wasn't about candlelight or music or some sudden romantic moment. It was about familiarity. Comfort. A false sense of safety that made me ignore the pit growing in my stomach. The truth is, it didn't feel like betrayal at first. That part came later. That awful, gut-twisting realization that something had shifted the moment I let my guard down. I kept telling myself, nothing's going to happen, this is innocent. But sometimes, it's not about what happens physically, it's about the energy in the room. The lingering eye contact. The subtle shift in tone. The unspoken thoughts that start to rise to the surface. By the time the rain stopped, it was already dark. And Mark, well, he hadn't left. Not yet. This isn't just a story about infidelity. It's about how quickly trust can crumble and how sometimes, the biggest betrayals come from the people we never expected. In the moments that followed, everything I believed about friendship, loyalty, and boundaries was put to the test. And the worst part? What happened next didn't just affect me, it changed everything between Rachel and me. Because secrets have a way of coming to light, even the ones we try hardest to bury. You won't believe what happened after that night. I didn't sleep that night. Not really. I kept replaying every moment, every word, every glance, every pause in the conversation, as if I could rewind time and change something. But there was nothing obvious to undo. Technically, nothing had happened. No lines had been visibly crossed. And yet, it didn't feel innocent. It didn't feel like just a rainy evening shared between a friend's husband and a lonely woman with a leak under her sink. It felt like something shifted, and I couldn't shake it off. The next morning, Mark was gone before sunrise. I didn't even hear the door close. I just woke up to silence, as if none of it had happened. But the energy in the house was different, like the air had thickened overnight. I kept telling myself I was reading too much into it. I mean, he was Rachel's husband. Rachel. My closest friend. The person I'd vented to about work stress, late-night loneliness, and everything in between. I trusted her. I respected their marriage. Or at least, I thought I did. I didn't see Mark again for a while after that. But I started hearing more about him, from Rachel. She would mention how distant he'd been lately, how he was working late more than usual. At first, I thought it was guilt eating away at me. But then came the phone calls. Random, casual calls from Mark, checking in just to see how the leak held up. Or texting me late at night with a "hope you're doing okay" message that didn't sit right. I tried to keep my replies short. Polite. Distant. But something told me he was trying to keep that door open. I wanted to talk to Rachel about it, just come clean, say that something about that night didn't sit right with me. But how do you tell your best friend that her husband gave you a look that you can't unsee? That he stayed a little too long and said a little too much? Then, one weekend, Rachel invited me over for dinner. She said she missed me. Said it had been too long since we just hung out. And I could feel my stomach twist. Because now, being around her felt like lying. Like I was hiding a secret I didn't ask for but somehow got stuck with. And worst of all, I didn't know if she already knew. Or if Mark had said something first. That night at her house? That's when everything started to unravel. Rachel's house looked exactly the same, warm lighting, candles flickering softly, her usual scented diffuser filling the air with lavender. It should have felt comforting, familiar. But instead, every second I was there, I felt like I was walking on glass. Mark greeted me at the door like nothing had happened. His smile was too smooth, too practiced. He even pulled out a chair for me at the dinner table, just like a polite host. But when our eyes met, there was something unspoken hanging in the silence between us. Rachel didn't notice. She was busy pouring wine and chatting about a new yoga class she'd joined. I kept waiting for a moment to pull her aside, to say something, anything, but it never felt right. And then, halfway through dinner, she leaned over and said something that made my heart drop. You know, she said, with a little laugh, Mark told me he really enjoyed helping you out that day. Said it was nice to talk to someone who actually listens. Her words felt casual, even kind. But to me, they were a ticking clock. What exactly had Mark told her? Had he downplayed the situation or twisted it into something else? Or worse, was this her way of letting me know she already suspected something? The rest of the night blurred. We ate, we talked, we smiled like people who didn't have 100 things boiling beneath the surface. But every moment was loaded. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched or tested. Mark barely spoke to me after that comment, but when Rachel went to the kitchen to grab dessert, he whispered, "You're not going to say anything, right?" That single sentence turned everything upside down. Now, I wasn't just struggling with guilt, I was caught in a secret I never asked for. I didn't want to be part of this mess. I didn't want to be the wedge between a husband and wife. But the more I kept quiet, the more it felt like I was choosing a side. Over the next few weeks, things got even stranger. Rachel started asking me more personal questions. Where I'd been. Who I'd been with. If I'd seen Mark lately. And each time, I gave safe answers, but deep down, I wondered if she already knew the truth and was just waiting for me to crack. Because secrets don't stay buried forever. And this one? It was already beginning to surface. It all came to a head on a Friday evening I'll never forget. Rachel called me out of the blue, asking if I could stop by her place to help her pick out an outfit for an upcoming office event. Her voice was friendly, upbeat, but there was something in her tone I couldn't read. I hesitated, unsure whether to keep my distance or face whatever was simmering beneath the surface. But something told me if I didn't go, she'd take it as a sign that I was hiding something. So I agreed. When I arrived, the lights were low, and the house was unusually quiet. Rachel greeted me with a soft smile, but her eyes didn't match. She led me into the bedroom, where a few dresses were laid out on the bed, and we talked casually, at first. She asked for my opinion, held up 2 options, and even laughed a little when I teased her about her overthinking. But just when I started to relax, she turned serious. "Can I ask you something?" she said, holding one of the dresses against her chest but not looking at me. "And I want the truth." I froze. Before I could respond, she added, "Did anything happen that day Mark came over to your place?" My heart dropped. Everything felt still, like time had paused around us. I tried to find the right words, but there weren't any. Not the kind that could explain a night full of blurred lines and confusion. I wanted to be honest. I really did. But the fear of ruining everything, of confirming her worst suspicion, stopped me cold. I think, maybe something happened that shouldn't have, I finally said, my voice barely above a whisper. She looked at me then. Really looked. Her eyes were glassy, but her expression didn't break. She nodded slowly, like she had already known, but needed to hear it from me to make it real. And then, she did something I didn't expect. She walked out of the room without saying a word. I sat there for what felt like hours, staring at the dress she left behind, the silence pressing in on me like a weight. I didn't know if she was calling Mark. Or if she was crying. Or if she just needed space to decide what came next. But I knew, without a doubt, that everything was about to change. I waited in that room for nearly 20 minutes, too afraid to move, too unsure of what I'd face if I walked out. The silence wasn't peaceful, it was thick, uncomfortable, like it had something to say but refused to speak. I kept replaying Rachel's face in my mind. She hadn't yelled. She hadn't cried. She just left. And somehow, that was worse. Finally, I stood up and stepped out of the bedroom, slowly making my way down the hallway. The lights in the kitchen were off, and the front door was slightly ajar. My heart pounded. I called out her name once, then twice, but there was no response. Just the faint sound of tires screeching outside. I rushed to the window and caught a glimpse of Rachel's car speeding down the street. I had no idea where she was going. But I had a sinking feeling it had something to do with Mark. Still in a daze, I tried calling her. Straight to voicemail. I tried texting. Nothing. I sat on her couch, not knowing what to do next, until a strange impulse pushed me toward the kitchen counter where her mail was piled. I don't know why I did it, maybe I was desperate for some kind of sign, but that's when I saw it. A small, half-open envelope. My name was on it. Not in her handwriting. It was Mark's. Inside was a short, handwritten note. Just a few lines. I haven't stopped thinking about that night. I know it was a mistake, but part of me doesn't regret it. If you feel the same, meet me. I'll be at the cabin Sunday. No pressure, just you and me, away from everything. My stomach turned. The cabin. Rachel had told me once about their small getaway spot a few hours out of town. It was their place, somewhere they went to reconnect when things got hard. And now, Mark was turning it into something else. Something secret. Something meant to stay hidden. But Rachel must have found this letter. That's why she looked so calm earlier. That's why she asked me that question. She already knew. And if she was headed to the cabin right now? I grabbed my phone and tried calling Mark. No answer. I left a voicemail I barely remember, something panicked and broken, warning him, asking him not to do anything stupid. But even as I said the words, I knew it was already too late. The story had shifted. What started as a moment of weakness had spiraled into something far messier. Now, it wasn't just about a leak, a long night, or a blurred line. It was about betrayal layered in lies, about a marriage unraveling in real time. I sat alone in her house, staring at that note, feeling my chest tighten with something that felt a lot like dread. Because I didn't just hurt Rachel. I might have lit the match that would burn everything down. And the worst part? I had no idea what I'd find once I got to that cabin. I didn't hesitate. As soon as I read Mark's note, I grabbed my keys and jumped in my car, my mind racing faster than the highway beneath me. The cabin was about 2 hours away, nestled deep in the woods where the trees grew thick and secrets felt impossible to hide. Every minute that passed felt heavier, like I was chasing a truth I wasn't sure I wanted to find. When I arrived, the sun was just beginning to set, casting long shadows across the cracked wooden porch. I could hear voices, Mark's and Rachel's, inside. I took a deep breath, steadying myself before pushing open the door. Inside, the air was tense. Rachel stood by the window, arms crossed, her eyes red but resolute. Mark was pacing near the fireplace, guilt and frustration etched across his face. For a moment, neither noticed me. It felt like I was intruding on a private storm. Rachel finally turned. "You came," she said quietly, her voice stronger than I expected. I nodded, feeling the weight of everything crashing down. I had to. Mark looked at both of us, exhaustion written all over him. "We need to talk," he said. And so we did. The air thickened as truth spilled out. Mark admitted the mistake, the pull he felt that night when he stayed, and the confusion that followed. Rachel spoke of betrayal and heartbreak, but also of wanting to understand why. I listened, torn between shame and the desperate hope that maybe, somehow, this could be fixed. Just as it seemed the conversation might lead to some clarity, the cabin door suddenly creaked open behind me. I spun around, heart pounding, only to see a woman standing there. She looked younger, maybe in her late 20s, with sharp eyes that flicked between all of us. "Rachel," she said calmly, "we need to talk." Everyone froze. She stepped inside, pulling a folder from her bag and setting it on the table. Inside were photos. Photos of Mark, texting her, meeting her at places Rachel would never have known about. The room was silent except for the sharp intake of breaths. "This isn't just about the leak," the woman said. "I'm his wife." Rachel's face drained of color. I stared at Mark, feeling like the ground beneath me was cracking wide open. He didn't deny it. It turned out, Mark had a whole other life, a second marriage hidden behind closed doors, a secret that no one had suspected. The mistake with me wasn't just a lapse, it was part of a tangled web he'd been spinning for months. Rachel looked at me, pain and betrayal mixing in her eyes, but then she turned to the woman and said something I never expected, "Thank you for telling me." The cabin, once a place meant for healing, had become the epicenter of a truth none of us were prepared for. As I left that night, the weight of everything hit me in full. What started as a simple leak had uncovered a much deeper betrayal, one that would take time, and maybe forgiveness, to heal. But the biggest shock? Sometimes the hardest secrets are the ones hiding right in front of you. The drive home was heavy with silence and thoughts I couldn't untangle. I kept replaying the night's revelations, the hidden wife, the double life Mark had led, and the heartbreak etched deep into Rachel's face. It felt surreal how something as small as a leak had opened a door to secrets none of us saw coming. In the days that followed, Rachel and I didn't speak much. She needed space to process everything, and honestly, so did I. But even in the quiet, our friendship began to shift. The trust had cracked, but not completely broken. We both knew that healing would take time, and that sometimes the people we love carry burdens we never even suspect. Rachel decided to confront her marriage head-on, choosing to face the truth no matter how painful. The woman who showed up at the cabin wasn't an enemy, she was part of a complicated story that Rachel deserved to understand fully. And I realized that being caught in the middle didn't make me a villain, it made me a witness to a moment that tested loyalty, boundaries, and forgiveness. As for Mark, his secrets had finally caught up with him. What began as a simple favor to fix a leak had exposed a web of lies that couldn't stay hidden any longer. It was a harsh reminder that sometimes, beneath the surface of the most ordinary days, there are storms waiting to break. Looking back, I see how fragile trust really is. How easily it can be shaken by one choice, one moment of weakness. But I also see the strength it takes to confront those moments, to face uncomfortable truths, and to keep moving forward. Life isn't about perfection, it's about learning from the cracks and choosing what kind of story you want to tell next. So, if there's one thing I want you to take away from this story, it's that sometimes, the people we think will protect us are the ones who challenge us the most. And that's okay. Because every test is an opportunity to grow, to set new boundaries, and to decide what kind of love and friendship we deserve. Thank you for listening to this true story about trust, betrayal, and the unexpected ways life unfolds. If you've ever faced a situation that shook your world, share your thoughts below, I'd love to hear from you. And remember, sometimes the smallest leaks lead to the biggest truths. 5.